the #1 team in the nation, the Duke Blue Devils, home for the final time this season against the Clemson Tigers.
Our officials, Rick Hartzell, John Clougherty, and Steve Gordon were underway. The opening tip controlled to Avery. Langdon. Not a bad start. A three-pointer for the Alaskan Assassin with the first possession of the game.
And it gives Duke a chance to quickly get into the pressing mode.
McIntyre feeds Weidman. Rejected by Domzalski. Triple team and a takeaway. On the deck, finally Langdon with the outlet to Carrawell. Avery doesn't have numbers. He waits for Trajan.
It is McIntyre on Avery to start.
Rand over Jamison. Very important in today's game that Jamison and Weidman stay out of foul difficulty. It's the one advantage they have. Count it, and a foul. Nice scoop to the hoop by Tony Christie. They wanted him badly. He recruited most of this talent that Rick Barnes had atop the top 15, as high as #2 in the country sometime back. Still a very dangerous team. It's 5-3 Blue Devils. Over a minute gone by in the opening half. Langdon off the dribble. Pulled away by Adam Allenspach, the sophomore from Parkland, Florida, who has played much better in February.
Well, he's not really posted now, Tim. He's more facing the basket, and that has helped his game tremendously.
Yeah, he's got a lot more versatility to his offensive game than either Jamison or Weidman. That's clear. That said, Jamison goes to the jump hook, gets the offensive board, stays with it, and knocks it down.
Harold Jamison came to Clemson over 300 pounds and not knowing whether he wanted to play football or basketball. There are those in the ACC who will tell you he still hasn't made up his mind.
Langdon, a leaner, pulled down by Christie. Poor pass, rushed it, and Carrawell picked it off. He promptly throws it away. Ailing with that hip problem. Surgery date already slated for April the 5th. And he's already begun to rehab. He calls it pre-rehab in preparation for his upcoming surgery. Brand almost had his pocket picked by McIntyre. Avery. William Avery's first three. 8-5 Blue Devils.
Duke changing the press now, backing it up a little bit, giving it a different look. Then it's a soft man for man, but it makes Terrell McIntyre work. It was Chris Carrawell who did the better defensive job on McIntyre down at Littlejohn. Carrawell 9 inches bigger, plus great defensive instincts.
Shot clock under 10. Loose ball out of bounds to Clemson. They'll have 5 on the shot clock once they trigger it in.
I tell you, if you're not looking at the number, it's hard to tell the two jump shots apart between he and Langdon.
Solomon just checked in and just knocked down a jumper inside the painted area to make it an 8-7 game.
Well, Solomon will help a little bit against the pressure. He got 19 in the first game against Duke, and it was a situation where 2 players were suspended. And they really weren't prepared for him, but in his first start, Solomon stepped up and got 19 in Littlejohn, and that game at the half, Tim, was a 3-point game. In fact, with about a minute to go, Clemson was up 2 before the half. So the second half explosion just did them in, but they have confidence they can play Duke tough.
Weidman picked up that foul, his first, team's first. 3.5 minutes gone here in the opening half from Cameron Indoor Stadium. And Brando Bucky Waters, happy to have you with us. Langdon again. Not this time. Pulled down by Weidman. Jurkunas, an excellent wing jump shooter, knocks down the 3. And the Tigers lead by 2. And we mentioned at the top, from a mere matchup standpoint, because of their size, Clemson, a tougher team for the Devils to take than perhaps any of the other teams on the proverbial bubble in this league.
And when the perimeter shooters, Christie and Jurkunas, are hitting, they are a handful. And why? They were highly ranked at the beginning of the year. Who can account for a 1-7 the first half of the league? not anybody really, except bad free throw shooting.
10-8 Tigers on Seniors Day against #1 Duke.
Tom Weidman, they're capturing 1 of 7 caroms as they dominate the early board play 7-1. As Duke's signature is defense, Clemson is rebounding.
Not this time for Avery. Pulled down by Weidman again. And the tempo control of this game very critical to Larry Chiat's club. And right now, the Tigers have this one in a half-court grind mode. They've spread the floor with McIntyre at the top.
I think Clemson's going to take transition whenever they can. But if it's clearly a half-court situation, they're going to try to spread the Devils, get good spacing, and get dribble penetration. Terrell McIntyre couldn't pull it off that time.
Not surprising that from a defensive standpoint, Battier got his hand in there. Clearly the best defender on this club. Inside, nice work by Brand. Tying the game at 10, his 4th point.
Sometimes when Duke comes out burying threes as they did, they forget about the franchise. The big fella down inside, things get a little easy, and they forget to go to him.
Offensive foul spotted by Rick Hartzell. Tigers with 5 of them, not uncommon, but today what is uncommon is that the Devils have needed all of them to stay tied in this game.
And they've had a hard time really converting them into layups as they're wont to do when they start running.
Nate James with the dump down to Brand. He goes reversal.
2 for 2 for the guy with the Velcro hands.
There's the pressure from Maggette. Gets a little help from Weidman. How will Clemson's bench handle this kind of pressure as Maggette picks up the hand-checking foul? Harold Jamison checks back in. Weidman sits down for Clemson. What's interesting in our conversation with Mike prior to today's game that he mentioned that in terms of potential holes in the armor, that one hole might be inside if Elton doesn't play a great game. Christie off a beautiful feed from McIntyre.
Boy, you got to keep the little guy out of the paint.
There he is. He's a gnat. And he's been bothersome to Duke here at the outset.
And he's healthy. He's got the stroke, and he's really attacking the glass. But going back to McIntyre, instead of Terrell trying to labor through the pressure of Avery, he's put him down off the stacks, coming off the picks, and he has put Solomon in the backcourt with Maggette. Maggette's a good defender, but not necessarily at the point guard position. So smooth move so far by Clemson.
Now remember, McIntyre is as much a warrior as Mike Krzyzewski would like to have on one's team. Avery. And McIntyre bothering him again, and he picks up a cheap foul this time.
They definitely did not come in here intimidated. Based on the 1-point loss they suffered last year and a 2-point loss in the tournament, they think they can beat the Devils.
Yeah, that means a lot to this team. It really does. And as I said earlier, Larry Chiat has been very positive about this team, even when it was saddled with a 1-7 record after a miserable January. Jamison quickly doubled, finds Allenspach on the other block. Out to Solomon for 3. 5 in the game for Will Solomon, the freshman from East Hartford, Connecticut. 17-14 Tigers, not quite 7 minutes gone here in the opening half.
There's not enough movement from Duke offensively to see exactly what defense they're playing, but I think it's a triangle in 2.
Again, the reach-in foul.
And this was the defense that Clemson was in. Coming out into that second half, Shane Battier stepped back to the head of the key, and the triangle did not extend, and he had 2 good looks. And he hit 2 threes back-to-back to start the second half, and the 3-point lead went to 9, and then Duke exploded, and it was a 22-point loss, the biggest the Tigers have suffered in ACC this year.
Jurkunas is back in the game. Solomon sits down and picked up that foul, his second. Langdon over McIntyre for 3. He has 2 of them, the first of the game. And now 6 minutes later, he punches another one through.
And Mike Krzyzewski forgot all about that hip. He wanted something for Langdon, who was flat on his back at the conclusion of that 3.
Jamison.
Whoa.
Goes up into the co-ed area.
Yeah, but he had to get through some gruffy old, chunky old sports writers to get there. But it looks like where he landed was probably worth it. Well, I understand what you're saying. Teams like North Carolina, who has 15 players now in the NBA, 1/4 of the ACC players playing in the NBA, they play really well here. I think the key, Tim, is that if you're confident and talented, you love this atmosphere. Brings out the best in you. If you're not quite so confident or not so talented, it can be very intimidating.
Jamison working against Domzowski, and then the help comes from Maggette. He strips him. Nate James could not corral that pass from Langdon. McIntyre the other way. Tough pass. Domzowski right in the passing lane. Textbook Duke defense. And the pull-up.
Boy, the Blue Devils having to work for everything.
19-17, Devils reclaim the lead.
This crowd spoiled. By this time, it's usually that big blue tidal wave.
McIntyre blows past Maggette and a super fadeaway in the paint. That breaks a scoring spell for the Tigers. They've given up a 5-0 run. 19-19, the #1 Devils and the Clemson Tigers. One team with illusions of grandeur with a huge victory after having a sloppy start to the '99 campaign. The other trying to hold on to #1 and playing with all the emotion of Seniors Day for 3 quality kids. Christie, not this time, out of bounds, last touched by Battier. Clemson will have it underneath its own hoop.
The adjustment I promised you is now in effect. Chris Carrawell is now guarding Terrell McIntyre. Let's check out at this point a tie game, see what a difference it makes.
Maggette knocking away from Tony Christie.
Those 9 inches will give McIntyre difficulty with his outside shot, and Carrawell, with great defensive instincts, can stay far enough away from him to keep him out of the paint. That's why the adjustment was made. If McIntyre gets 35, I don't think Clemson can win. But what he does is make Jurkunas and Christie and Weidman and Jamison scorers. That's critical.
High pick from Jamison. McIntyre's 3 won't go. Battier clears. So it's Maggette, Carrawell, Brand, Battier, and Langdon on the floor for the Devils. Giving up the 3. And then trying to take away the entry pass to Elton Brand, and Tom Weidman picks up his 2nd foul.
Or Langdon. It is a triangle in 2.
Brand over Allenstock.
Clemson is playing the guards head-to-head.
10 in the game for Elton Brand. Almost half their output. 21-19.
Excuse me, Tim, even after pressure now, Duke coming way back to dig in their half-court defense. They've called off the pressure.
Jurkunas, Allenstock, Tony Christie, Jamison, and McIntyre on the deck for the Tigers. Christie trying to blow past Avery, a tough take. Well, he was up to it. Off the window pane with beauty. 7 in the game for him, 21 all.
Big time move there.
Battier trying to set the pick for Langdon, and John Clougherty spots the foul. Langdon on the wing. Carrawell. Tough shot. With people around him knocking down the bucket. You look at Carrawell and you say, well, he's so very versatile. To make a solid case for all ACC for him, and yet he's overlooked by so many because of the outstanding stars that this team has. Solomon pulls up. Nice move.
What was impressive about that? Here's Solomon, first game in Cameron, and he was very much under control.
Again, right on cue, Chris Carrawell. The thing that I think of where he's concerned, Bucky, is spark. He's the guy that when perhaps everyone's not playing at their highest level, somehow he's the guy that steps out and makes a play.
Tim, you're right, and it was never more pronounced in the St. John's game with Avery on the bench. In the overtime, it was Carrawell who took over the ball and got the Devils out of Madison Square Garden with a big W.
Tony Christie is on fire, and it's a 1-point Clemson lead. Brandon and Allensbach involved, and I believe Adam may be whistled for the push. Both teams shooting lights out in this game.
And it's not like the other team is passive defensively. Extremely well played. Nice to see John Clockerty back in the ACC. This recent agreement between the major conferences to shift around some of their top officials. John's a native of Raleigh, and he's a good one. I know Fred Barricat's not going to let Big Ten or SEC or anybody else slide anybody in here that isn't top notch. The officials in this league are as good as they get.
Dustin Braddock is checking into the game now for the Tigers. A reminder, stay tuned at halftime for Bell South's You Call the Play feature. A look at big plays from past ACC games. Allensbach with a big bucket for the Tigers.
There's the point we made earlier. He's not a back to the basket post player. Much better out there, 12 to 15 feet. And he runs the floor well for a big guy.
Carrawell with the dump down to Brand. That's automatic. Count it. And a foul off the ball against Jamison that really hurts the Tigers' defensive cause in this sequence. He was really away from the ball, came down to help, and he was way too late. And I'm sure the senior wishes he had shown better judgment there.
Yeah, that's the kind of a play an excited freshman or sophomore makes, overzealous.
McIntyre. Long rebound to Jurkunas. Langdon stripped him on the way up.
Clemson tried to spread the floor that time, but it just didn't work because the score was, oh, what a, that's a running leaner floater, and he can do that as well as anybody.
William Avery has 5 on the day. 2-point Duke lead.
You know, even with that big front line, Tim, Clemson is not a shot blocking team. Their big guys are more check off and rebound. They don't go after many, unlike a Georgia Tech. So you can take that floater in there pretty deep.
Trying to work the pick and roll. Jurkunas and Allensbach. That was a good idea. Nice play. And Trajan Langdon, who ran into that pick, is down. It was Langdon that was picked on that play. Mike Krzyzewski a little upset that a moving pick was not called. And he's giving Rick Hartzell an earful right now. With his hip problem, it's always tough for him to get down in that position. The intensity is there, isn't it?
It looks like Dave Englehart might be wanting to put a few stitches in there.
Definitely bloodied, and Coach K was out to quickly point out that an elbow did catch him. In truth, it did look like an incidental elbow, but it hurts nonetheless.
Yeah, especially from a 7-footer.
Loose ball, McIntyre does not have numbers. The Duke transition defense always outstanding. Burgess is on the floor for the Devils for the first time. And Tony Christie up to a dozen now on the day, giving Clemson a 2-point lead. Brandon again feels the double team off to Maggette, and a block. You know, you think of players like Corey Maggette, and the beat just goes on. A guy like Corey Maggette to have the kind of impact that he has had this season. It tells you so much about where this program is, and that you could find playing time for him.
Yeah, and he praises Maggette, who's averaging about 15 minutes a game, but he's just, I mean, a bundle of energy and talent and strength. Jeff Capel, the former Duke player, told me recently, he said, when you foul Maggette, you can get hurt. He's that strong, and he comes that hard.
William Avery picks up the foul, reaching in, his first. Clemson's been well into the bonus for some time. In fact, they're 1 away from the double bonus. The Devils will be shooting 2 after the next team foul by the Tigers.
Clemson has had difficulty at the close of the half. At one stretch, over 5 games, they were outscored 12-zip in the last 10 seconds of the half, and Duke was one of those. We pointed out earlier, Clemson had a 2-point lead with a little over a minute, and Duke scored the last 5 points to go down with a 3-point lead. It's something that they've gotten a little mental about, trying to hold on to that momentum right till the buzzer at halftime.
Christie pops out. He's been so productive today. He's being checked by Maggette. Shot clock now down to 15. Duke continuing to pressure the ball. Overplays, and it leads to a turnover. Jurkunas bothered by Carrawell. And it's the 9th turnover for Larry Chiat's club today as they lead by 1 with just under 6 minutes to play in the half.
Terrell Boogie McIntyre just gave Adam Allensbach what for not holding his pick.
And Allensbach slapping the leather, gets a piece of Elton Brand, his second.
Best thing you can do is ride him up, try to make his shot difficult, and keep him off the board. Once he gets it in that deep, your chances of making a defensive play of that magnitude are virtually nil. Not smart fouls by Clemson. They're playing with a lot of heart, but not with their head.
With Chucky Gilmore coming in, the freshman from Fayetteville, North Carolina, it points up the fact that frontline players, you know, you're talking about attrition late in the game. Already 2 on Weidman, 2 on Allensbach. Jamison wasted 1 earlier, so now Gilmore has some fouls to give in the low post as they play ball denial of Jamison. McIntyre trying to shake Avery. Tough pass knocked away by Brand. And the foul given up by McIntyre as Maggette was blowing past him.
Rebounds for McIntyre, and that's a problem because he is such a good penetrator, and it's under that penetrating mode that he creates offense for all those big bears in there who play off his efforts in the paint.
It's one of the 2. Jamison clears. Now Carrawell on the floor with Maggette, Avery, Brand, and Battier for the Devils. Clemson counters with McIntyre, Jamison, Chucky Gilmore, Tony Christie, and Andreas Jurkunas. Nice look open for McIntyre, and he can't knock it down. Carrawell. Boy, Maggette, what hands! Would have counted had it gone, and Jamison collects a second.
Freshman of the year because he's playing 35, 36 minutes, but this kid's really got it, and he's handled himself extremely well under the immense pressure of being 1 or 2 with the 1 or 2 team in the country all year.
Maggette obviously will be replaced momentarily by Trajan Langdon.
Looks like Trajan Langdon. I think he got a stitch or 2 in there, and he's got a big bandage on his face.
And right away, he and Jurkunas get mixed up.
He's just not the most agile guy in the world. He was trying to rub Trajan off the pick, and Trajan wouldn't have it. So that was just hoops. And I also don't feel that Allensbach, it was not a cheap shot either. It was just kind of out there. And the way they are setting picks in this day, that little movement, whatever, is very normal.
Oh, wait a minute. Larry Chiat really upset. I believe a technical was called. No, a 3rd foul on Jurkunas. There was another. And I understand Larry Chiat's concern here. That's like a double whammy. It might as well have been a technical. You're getting the same thing that you would have if in fact it were a technical other than the ball.
I think the officials are feeling that they better turn the screws down. It's getting a little out of hand, and when the pendulum swung back, it has hit Clemson squarely between the eyes.
Yeah, well,
I think they're getting the brunt of the tighter calls here.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Coach K's concern and emotion within that concern played a role in that particular call, or at least the second call with Jurkunas, no doubt about it. The announcers for our game, selected and compensated by Raycom and Jefferson Pilot Sports. Any use of this broadcast without their express permission is prohibited. Largest lead of the game, and it comes with a dead ball and a double whammy foul against Andreas Jurkunas upon Trajan Langdon's re-entry into the game. And frankly, if I'm Larry Chiat, I'm upset too. Cross-court pass. You can't do that against Duke. Avery. Nothing run, and again, the 2 fouls called against Jurkunas, the catalyst there. And Mike Krzyzewski certainly had expressed his opinion as to the fouls against Langdon, and when he came back in and there was contact, Clemson had to pay, and Avery gets another layup. 44-32, a 12-point lead for #1 Duke.
Larry Shiat has to really rethink Tom Weidman handling the ball in the backcourt.
Clemson's been ragged since those 2 fouls against Jurkunas that got them to the line for what was a 6-point play.
Wow.
It had been tied. In fact, we'd had 10 ties in this game until this 12-0 run by the Devils. Weidman leaning in. Battier picks up the blocking foul against Weidman, his second.
First time that's ever happened in 121 games these guys have played together.
I had that game against Florida State. Gil McGregor and I were there, and Bucky, I got to tell you, I thought Clemson played as well as I've seen them play this season in that game. And apparently some problems with the crowd. Mike Krzyzewski will take over.
Listen, whoever has the laser that you're shining on, kids, why don't you just leave the game? This game is too big for both teams.
Evidently, someone in the crowd has a laser light and is shining it on the players. And while he was shooting, and Mike Krzyzewski just asked that person to leave. It's obviously a Duke fan because it was in the Clemson player's eye. I figured that out.
3.5 to play here in the opening half. Orlando Bucky Waters along with Mike Hogwood. Happy to have you with us. Battier doesn't get the roll. And John Clougherty spots a foul. They've been over the back. Elton Brand, his first foul.
Yeah, it's clear to me that, and these are really good officials, that they're concerned about this thing just getting a little too out of hand. Now, take a look now at Christie in the 3rd spot on the lane. Clemson is such a poor free throw shooting team that they really plan on a miss. Watch how hard that 3rd player works. Well, he didn't, but normally they do. Most teams don't put a 3rd one up there, but they work very hard to try to get in that lane.
Battier. That's a 3. It's a 15-love run now for #1 Duke.
Battier, a 38% shooter from 3, but he always seems to get them when they hurt most, like his 2 back-to-back to start the second half at Littlejohn.
This is a very crucial possession now for Clemson and their confidence. And the seniors are involved. McIntyre, finger roll won't go. Jamison stays with it. And it's a tied-up ball on the way up. It was all leather. Battier all over it again.
The Minister of Defense. You know how strong you have to be, how quick you have to be to get on top of Harold Jamison's power move to the rim. Great D.
Bucky, these last 2.5 minutes are critical for Clemson.
Yeah, they are. And they, as I pointed out earlier, this time of the game has not been good for them.
One more time, a 3 for the Minister of Defense in transition to offense. An 18-0 run. All beginning with a double foul against Jurkunas. On a 6-point swing, Clemson has simply not recovered from it. Mentally or physically, it appears. That's the drought. And a palming call, a carry against Larry Shiat's team. That is the 15th Tigers turnover. Now it's a matter of survival. You're thinking of halftime as being like the first TV timeout, and you're being blitzed early. In this case, Clemson, who was right there with them, counterpunching along, But the entry or the re-entry of Trajan Langdon into the game, and I think, again, great coaching by Mike Krzyzewski. He was in the official's ear early on the moving pick. The moment he comes back in and there's contact, a double foul, and from that point forth, it's been all Duke.
Usually, a coach in that situation will go ahead and get a technical. We call it timed intimidation in the coaching profession. That time, because I think the seriousness of the injury and the home crowd sort of being sympathetic, he was able to make his points without getting the tee, but clearly he was demonstrative, and you're right. The tide went out right after that play. Langdon going to the locker room early. Just a little under 2 minutes, and this game could be over if Clemson doesn't keep its cool. My key to the game was they couldn't have a meltdown in here, and the last 7 minutes, it's been a meltdown.
Two-man game, now Avery from deep. Jamison retrieves it, quick outlet, bad idea with Battier back there. Carrawell with numbers, Maggette. It is a 20-0 run. Dustin Braddock left alone. Boy, the iron unkind to Clemson in the last 9 minutes. A pull-up for Carrawell.
Larry Shyatt trying to get to halftime without burning any more timeouts.
There they are again, this time Elton Brand. Braddock has numbers. Allen's pop. Player control foul against the Tigers. The confidence level that he has is in sharp contrast to the confidence level of many young players in this country. And he's had it all along, even his freshman year. Maggette from the seat of his pants. Clemson shut out from 32 all the way through the remainder of the first half until that three-pointer from McIntyre. He ends the drought, a 7-minute drought, and it's a 21-point deficit.
It's important now that McIntyre or Jamison not get a third foul here on this move.
And I believe Braddock picked it up.
Braddock had 10 points as a freshman playing in that first game.
He just knocked it away. No foul. He was just knocking it away. 3.5 remaining. Brandon. That does it for the first half. It's an emotional game. And on Seniors Day, it was the emotion of the coach that was the key. Clemson gets it to open, and they need a quality start to climb back into this.
Yeah, they really do. It's a veteran team. They're smart enough to know they got to come back one possession at a time. But they've got to be, they became very tentative. And they're not off to a good start. He gets right out on the throughway, man, and takes it. Oh.
Taking more charges than anyone. 29 at last season. They monitor that here. Wear it like a badge of honor. Langdon off the front iron. Christie collects it for the Tigers. Will Solomon is starting the second half of this game for the Tigers. He's joined by Christie, Weidman, Jamison, and McIntyre. Terrell finds Christie on the wing for three. Jamison fighting for it, but can't come up with it. Langdon off the floor brings it down.
Solomon's in there for two reasons. One, they need more ball handling, and it gives them a second ball handler to help McIntyre. And two, he's a very confident player against Duke, and he looked good when he came in early in the first half before the roof fell in.
After the tie-up, the arrow pointing to Duke. So they have possession of the basketball. Langdon for three. And the shooter's touch there to keep it up for Battier, and he's fouled underneath.
One of the real emphasis points by Duke now is that what they call perimeter rebounding. Anybody on that floor, including Elton Brand, can take the ball off the defensive end and drive it up the floor. And Krzyzewski really wants to see those perimeter guys come into the paint, pull it off, and go. And of course, they're such a good three-point shooting team. It's interesting, two of the number 2, 3, and 4 scorers in the league were on the floor today as we started this game. But the real story in the first half was the Duke pressure defense.
Christie looking for a pick from Jamison. Could not get it. Solomon gives it up to Harold. Nice interior passing now, but Weidman got caught up in the air. And another time ball, the arrow to the Devils with the defense forcing that. It goes back the other way. 20th turnover. And Jurkunas comes back on the floor.
Weidman really having a hard time today with the quickness of Duke.
And I again, almost half of those turnovers coming after Jurkunas had picked up the 2 fouls on a 6-point play that really changed the ebb and flow of this game.
Clearly energized the Duke defense, which doesn't need much help.
No, Carrawell, he has 9 on the day. And I'm sure Larry Chiat's thinking, well, they're already great. Give them any kind of an emotional lift that otherwise would not be there, and you're in a lot of trouble on the road in this building.
It's like jerking on Superman's cape. Boy, they got him mad.
Brand with the rebound. Lead is up to 24. And again, oh, how nimble. Count it, and a foul. That's his 4th foul. The other factor, too, is Brand, with his great size, has the capability of making adjustments in midair that defies gravity for a man of his size and strength.
He's like the lead boulder in an avalanche coming down there, and very determined to get to the paint.
Jamison with a jump hook over Brand. Avery pulls it down. McIntyre slaps it away. Weidman. Clemson just can't get it to fall. Touch pass McIntyre. Weidman, even with that strength, can't get it to fall. But Brand picks up the foul. Hovering around 50% most of his career.
Larry Chiat tried everything. He went out and hired Mark Ivoroni, a former Virginia player, to come in and tweak their minds and work on their release. But it's improved some. They were 60% overall, 62% in the ACC, so it's improved a little. But those big guys get fouled a lot, and it just drains your offense when they can't convert.
(62-36). Not quite 3 minutes gone. Second half. The #1 Devils looking to move to 15-0 in the ACC. Their trek to an undefeated season. Of course, North Carolina will have much to say about that next week in a game that you'll be able to see here on Raycom and Jefferson Pilot. And the foul picked up by William Avery.
The Blue Devils, meanwhile, will go to Chicago on Wednesday night for a battle with the young Blue Demons of Pat Kennedy and out of conference to prepare for the rematch on Saturday with the Tar Heels.
Former head coach at Florida State in the ACC. Weidman, an extra step. And they'll be playing a team. That's the 21st Tigers turnover of the afternoon. But in that game, you're talking about another team on the fringe, or bubble, as it were, in the NCAA tournament race. DePaul has done a nice job this season in adjusting to Pat Kennedy's style of play, and give him a couple of more years recruiting the Chicagoland area, and they will be a tough out.
He's got some fine young talent there, and they could make a surge late. I understand the United Center is nearly sold out for that one, and I'm sure Corey Maggette has plenty of tickets. Just write or call. He's got him to give away. I just know that.
Battier knocking down the jumper. He has 11 on the afternoon, 64-36. Christie from way downtown. Too strong, taken down by Carrawell. Brand still running the floor so well. There's the dump down to him. Quick double team, and out to Langdon. Battier keeping it alive again. Oh, is he special? Battier again. Oh, my.
Shane Battier abusing Tom Weidman. Just kept it in over his head, stepped in front of him for the tip in.
20-second timeout.
And a damage control timeout.
Duke has dominated the regular season for the last, now the third straight year, but March has not been good to them. And they're determined to make that change this year.
Solomon knocks down a tray. Well, that ends another long drought of three-pointers. McIntyre had the last one. Solomon now up to 10, 66-39. Blue Devils with the lead.
Boxing one now by Clemson. McIntyre chasing Avery.
Burgess, Maggette, Nate James, and Avery joining Battier. Maggette can't hit. Loose ball. Maggette gets it right back. Burgess. There's a jump ball on the way up. Clemson will get it.
Every time Michigan or Ohio State would come in and beat up on them in the second half, they'd say, okay, you're going to work for us someday.
Solomon, nice crossover move to blow past Maggette, and he uses the glass. Boy, Solomon's had a very solid day, the freshman from East Hartford. He has a dozen points. (66-41). Burgess on the floor with Battier. Not this time. Again, James keeping it alive. Boy, Duke is just they specialize in that. If they don't corral it, they'll keep it alive so someone else can pick it up. And Nate James, the sophomore from Washington's St. John's at Prospect Hall, gets his first deuce.
Oh!
McIntyre now 1 of 6 from three-point land.
Corey Maggette is exciting and a better offensive player, but Nate James has been perhaps the most consistent player off the Blue Devils bench. It's been the emergence of Chris Carrawell. He has played so good that Mike Krzyzewski had to completely change his rotation to keep him on the floor, and that meant Battier got less time on the perimeter and more time inside. So Damon Domzowski, whose attitude has been marvelous through his career here, never stopped hustling. The McDonald's All-American that was being confronted with just a lot of good players, and he has remained positive, and that's much to his credit. I led the world, I think, in the transfers, and he's never considered it. I admire it.
James leaning in, gets the contact and the foul. There's Gilmore coming into the game for Allensbach. You know, when we talked to Coach K prior to the game, and he did openly admit that there were two key games, obviously the loss to Cincinnati, the time of it, and where it happened, perhaps helping his team find out about itself. And then some windows of opportunity for the rest of the country, I think, came into focus as Maggette picks up the cheapie there. You can still learn from losses and W's in the case of St. John's.
Good point, Tim. The fact that William Avery was on the bench along with Elton Brand at the Garden, and they were able to hold off a really fine St. John's team in overtime, gave them a lot of confidence.
Braddock doing a nice job of keeping it alive. That's a smart play.
Some nice young talent. Here's another one. Harold Solomon.
McIntyre past Maggette. Little floater that won't fall. And James retrieves it. And Braddock reaches in and picks up the foul. Trying to cut inside the pass to Trajan Langdon.
You know, I really admired Larry Shyatt a little earlier in the season with Duke and Maryland coming to town in the same week. He declared Vincent Witt and Johnny Miller suspended indefinitely, never let him back. At that time also, Tony Christie was injured. So, you know, you look at a coach making a stand for what he believes, and he did it at a very crucial time. As it turned out, they played Duke pretty tough, and they played Maryland to overtime without those starters and key reserves. So
it's not always about strength and size. It's about quickness to the ball from your low post personnel. And Duke is clearly quicker to the ball than most.
Through all 9 players, including Taman Domzowski for his size.
Maggette keeping it alive, out of bounds to Duke. You can see the frustration now for Clemson. Jamison and McIntyre have tried to put the game face on, but oh so difficult. Once they get you down, they generally knock you out. And they still have more than 12 minutes with this litmus test.
They never stop attacking. Some teams concerned about running clock, etc. They've got one gear.
Carrawell and Avery re-enter. James and Maggette sit down. And you see Mike Krzyzewski staying down, sitting there. It's most difficult for him to get up. He talked about mobility or lack thereof, and he's still able to coach the way he wants, but many times, particularly when trying to get the attention of his players, it's Quinn Snyder that does most of the theatrics. He's the guy that handles the choreography for Coach K these days. Nice to have another good guard that you can go to in critical situations. From 14 and 11 overall down, 4 teams going for at least one spot, one would think, in terms of an invitation to the big dance. And a carry. It's the second time we've seen that call today against the Tigers. I'm happy to see that call more and more, this one against Solomon. It's been a point of emphasis, but I've seen it called by certain crews and ignored by others during the course of the year.
Straight man now for the Clemson Tigers. They have been in a variety of defenses. It has not been effective since the early going. Duke right now has its ears laid back, very confident, 25-point lead, and yet nobody's leaving this arena. This is what they came to see.
Tony Christie picked up the foul as Battier took it to the rack and will now get to the line. Active capacity, again, I mentioned it at the top. The blueprint for success in intercollegiate athletics could certainly be drawn right here in what Mike Krzyzewski was able to create, in large part with the aid of an administrator that really cared about the game, was willing to hire him when he had a losing record at Army. Not many would have done that. Tom Butters did.
And he supported him, Mike Krzyzewski's first 3 years here, after taking the remnants from Bill Foster and going to the NIT. He had the 2 worst years in Duke basketball history at, I think it was 10 and 16 and 10 and 14, whatever. But, I mean, it was a struggle. And Tom Butters stood by him, and Duke has been well rewarded, and Mike is a long-term commitment now to Duke and the community.
Look at a brand new house. And a little, as they say, if you have so many acres, it's supposed to be called a section, right? I think you may have a section.
He's got a compound out there.
And not far from campus, which is exactly what he and his lovely wife Mickey wanted. Avery inside for Brand, count it, and a foul.
You might as well put your fingers in his eyes or over something, but don't try to take the ball away, not unless you got a jackhammer.
One last copy point on Kunis's exit. 2 of those 5 fouls came in one sequence that really changed the complexion of this game. Started the 20-0 run that really put this game in Duke's hip pocket prior to halftime. Solomon alley-ooping and able to get the conversion from Christie on what was an acrobatic move, and Battier gets the foul. During this recent run, Christie has had tremendous success. With Miller and Vincent Witt gone, they really had to look to him for more point production, as you see Battier leaving the game. Taman Domzalski checking in for him. I still believe that come ACC tournament time, Clemson is the team in the early rounds you want no part of.
Well, I think that's right. There are a bunch of them like that who seem to be getting better. The league was so young at the start, and now a lot of talented players have their ACC scar tissue, and there could be some big surprises. Remember, this Clemson team lost by 2 to Duke last year in the ACC tournament after their 1-point loss in Cameron.
I don't know that we've ever seen an ACC tournament in the modern era, Bucky, with so much at stake. McIntyre really reading his fellow senior there, Jamison, and retrieving that pass. But, you know, this would be sort of like going back to the old days where 6 of the 9 teams have a lot to play for.
Yeah, clearly. And, you know, the schedule doesn't favor Clemson in terms of a strong finish. They go from senior day here to senior day at Maryland when the Terrapins and Cole Fieldhouse are up for their fine senior crew. And then they finally get to come back to Littlejohn for their senior day next weekend, next Sunday. And Weidman and Jamison and McIntyre will be so honored. Christie, and they will host Georgia Tech. If Georgia Tech and Wake Forest can win 2 of the next 3, I think both of them have a shot.
Some teams will go into the tournament with the thought process that you need to win 2 ACC tournament games as opposed to 1 ACC tournament game to try to influence the selection committee.
Clearly, I think the way Florida State has gone winless in the second half after a nice 5-3 in the first half, they would need 2 wins in the tournament. I think Clemson would as well. But Georgia Tech has wins, you know, an overtime with Maryland, a win over North Carolina, and they played Duke really, really tough. And in addition to the power ratings and all that, each of the regions has an advisor that reports to that committee as to injuries and who's playing well now. So it's as fair as it can get.
McIntyre hits the tray. He has 12 on the day, 74-50. Well, I think it could become an interesting decision for that last spot, and you never know. Usually a high seed or a low seed out of a power conference could be your 63rd or 64th team picked. The question may be, was Wake Forest's victory over Maryland more impressive to the tournament selection committee than Georgia Tech's earlier regular season victory at home against North Carolina?
Well, later is better, Tim.
Yeah, it is.
Make a good point.
Numbers for McIntyre. Solomon, nice ball fake. Hanging up there, can't finish. Nate James corrals it. Maggette, a little out of control that time, and Jamison picks up the player control foul from Corey Maggette. And the ball will go the other way.
And believe me, as a freshman, he's playing key minutes, very productive. He's been a big part of the successful season to date.
They leave McIntyre free, and he can't connect. Weidman still on the deck with 4 burns, but unable to come up with it, and Duke gets it back.
The latter part of the first half was like the second half at Clemson. The only way to describe it is a Duke explosion.
Allen's puck again. You just can't throw it deep. With Langdon, Battier, Maggette, they'll make you pay when you go to the baseball pass. And there's a player control foul against James.
Well, the old adage in football, don't throw the long one short and don't throw the short one long. Jason Collier now the leading scorer in the ACC, pursued hotly by several guys in this game.
This time of the season too, Bucky, that extra day, even if it's just 1 extra day to prepare, there's Weidman, count it, and the foul over Domzalski. But even if it's an extra day to prepare, a Wednesday game versus a Thursday game for your opposition, and then you meet on Saturday, in late February when guys are emotionally and physically hitting that wall, that can really be beneficial.
Well, Clemson was clearly in that position earlier in the year. They had a marvelous Thursday night win over the University of North Carolina at Littlejohn, and then I'm sure none of them slept. In fact, that whole town probably didn't go to sleep that night with the mystique that the Tar Heels have had over Clemson. Anyway, they had to get in a bus the next day and play Saturday afternoon at Raleigh against a very determined and hungry NC State team, and it was their worst half of the season. Shane Battier, at this point in his career, is if he's in the lane, he's either going to try and block your shot, but more than likely, if you're coming hard, he's going to take the charge. So
that's his 30th. That's his 30th charge drawn this season. Now, that's more than last year. We still have games to play. Avery. Battier Back outside to Langdon. Jump stop. Trajan struggled with his shot today. So many times that's true with seniors playing their last game. The emotions playing in their home building for the last time. Trajan's going to have a big upper lip late tonight. And that's after time in the whirlpool. He got hammered, elbowed with a pick. And it became a real storyline to this game when he returned to action. Great save by Maggette. Langdon spots up. Jamison clears the rafters for the Tigers. McIntyre looks to push.
McIntyre shooting 1-1.
Crowd responds to Langdon as he sits down. Avery, Maggette, Brand, James. There you see. Wow, look at that. I think that's the second or third Band-Aid, and I'm wondering, it's got to hurt. And he's taken that. I think he's replaced it twice since the stitching was given to him.
Dave Engelhardt will be making a house call tonight, trying to get that under control.
74-54, 6:20 and counting. Quick double team. Boy, Jamison still playing hard. Really have to admire that young man. He comes up with the tie ball. Ball was loose, so it does go to the alternating possession, and the Devils hang on.
No quit, no Clydesdales. Tom Weidman, Harold Jamison, been battling in those trenches for Clemson for 4 years and have won a lot of respect. The free throw shooting is the only thing you can look at and say, boy, if they could have just done a better job there.
And it really never came up, Bucky, with the true answer to the loss of Greg Buckner. They've got the front line you need. They've got a magnificent point guard, but they never had that in-between player come to the forefront. Maggette, count it, and a foul.
Fouls on number 44.
And in some measure, they really had to rely too much on Terrell McIntyre to score because of the loss of Buckner, particularly in the early part of the ACC season.
You're absolutely right. Your Kunis just up and down, not predictable. Christie injured and again, not predictable. And the expectations were so high, top 25 team, and they hung around up there for 8 or 9 weeks. But that 1-7 in the first half of ACC play did him in.
Maggette, becoming the 4th Blue Devil in double figures, now has 11 after the free throw. Weidman. Brand brings it down. Maggette uses the loose ball to try to create, and then Jamison steps in. And Maggette picks up yet another foul.
You're looking at Corey Maggette and all of the things he does well. 3-point shooting, free throw shooting. He can fly. He's just with good coaching and tough competition every day in practice, honing those gifts. He's going to be very, very special. As long as he keeps his head on straight.
Avery for 3. Jammed home by Battier. Very little that man has not done this afternoon. 79-55. McIntyre. Shots coming very quickly now for the Tigers.
I call this part of the game chuck and duck.
Langdon.
Duke is emphasizing the chuck and Clemson the duck.
Solomon, too strong this time. And then over the back. Foul spotted against Clemson. I'm sure having Langdon with fresh legs is very important to him. Now, Trajan's had some back problems that he's had to fight through. Of all the players out there, would he be the one of greatest concern in terms of fatigue where Duke's concerned? Because this is a very deep team, I understand that, but I think Langdon's presence on the floor means a lot to the Devils.
Well, it really does. If the spacing is going to be good, you've got to hit the threes. Avery has demonstrated he can do that. The Trajan draws so much defensive attention. He creates opportunity for others. This Duke team, you know, the last 3 years, they've run roughshod through the league in the regular season. Last year it was Kentucky when they had really a terrific lead in the last 9 minutes. We're out of timeouts, and the Wildcats came back and caught them, but they haven't won the ACC tournament in the last several years. One of the adjustments that Duke has made is they did not have a strenuous running program in preseason. They lifted weights, they played, but they didn't have those really stringent. You report on October 15th, you know, razor sharp, and I think they feel that will give them those legs you referenced a little bit later in the season. But the schedule they've played, where they've played, who they've played, clearly Duke has played every part of their preparation in terms of conditioning and the schedule is well thought out, except they have to come back from Chicago on Thursday. Carolina's playing Tuesday night at home, and they will have an additional day to prepare. And by the way, congratulations to the Tar Heels. 29 years of 20 or more wins. That's just incredible.
It is amazing. Braddock picked up that foul, and the 5th Blue Devil to get into double figures, provided this bucket go down, would be Chris Carrawell. Brendan Haywood, who played about 6 minutes a game a year ago, has become a factor. Amola Okalaja, who was a role player, has become a proficient scorer for Bill Guthridge. He's done a remarkable job with the losses of the likes of Jamison and Carter. Gilmore, too strong. Carrawell clears. Avery has the numbers, trying to oop for Burgess.
The alley was okay, but Burge was too far under the hoop.
Take that one to the professor of English lit. And a foul underneath.
And Shaman Williams are 3 guys now, 3 starters now playing in the NBA. And for Carolina to be able to, I mean, they didn't rebuild. Bill Guthridge just reloaded. Here they are back in the top 20. And it's just an amazing demonstration of resilience.
Nice reaction there for Battier, who leaves. Taman Domzalski in for him.
For the Tigers.
Well, I think in Carolina, you're looking at one of those 3 or 4 seeds in the NCAA tournament that could really wreak havoc. This is one of those years when a 4 through a 12 seed legitimately has a chance to make it. 86-58 with 3 minutes and 40 seconds remaining. Tim Brando, Bucky Waters, and Mike Hogwood. Happy to have you with us today. #1 Devils are still #1 and #1 with a bullet. If you enjoy R&B music and keep up with such things in radio and records and Billboard magazine. Gilmore on the floor now for the Tigers, along with Christie, Jamison, Solomon, and McIntyre. Gilmore, 1 extra pass to Jamison. Oh, has the iron been unkind or just downright rude to the Tigers? Almost as many charges taken or drawn as rebounds. He has 3 drawn charges this afternoon, which is not uncommon, certainly a part of his defensive repertoire. Shane, and by the way, gives the best sound bites to the media after the game, in keeping with the Jay Billis tradition.
Yeah, but Jay didn't take charges. Jay hurt you. He bruised you, but he didn't take many charges. Pete Gillen.
But he was a great guy at giving sound bites.
Oh yeah.
Hence his television career.
Yeah, Pete,
which has flourished.
Pete Gillen is the quote machine now in the ACC. Love his remark about Duke. They're like Noah's Ark. They got 2 of everything. And he's right.
One thing about Pete, he's He's always going to give you used material, though. When he was at Providence and he beat Duke in the first round of the tournament a couple of years ago in Charlotte, used the same line then.
Yeah. Well,
when you switch jobs, you can use old material.
That's right? What Lou Holt said. I'm doing the same rope tricks now in South Carolina I did in South Bend.
Domzalski just hung in there. He and Burgess just hanging tough with one another there.
Well, the camaraderie there with the intense competition for playing time mostly is a credit to the players, and then it's also a credit to the coaching staff to be able to take those 9 McDonald's All-Americans and have them all put their ego below the most important thing to the team.
Solomon rattles another home from three-point range. He has 17. 88-63. Langdon leans in, patented from the Alaskan assassin.
All 3 seniors are on the floor now in their finale. Of course, Trajan Langdon and Taman Domzalski and Justin Callbeck.
Justin Callbeck being honored, coming off the floor. Young man you just mentioned from Rice Memorial High School in Shelburne, Vermont, leaving the game and getting a much-deserved hug from his head coach.
Well, the students appreciate, too, the fact that guys going to practice every day and basically not getting any playing time. It's really hard to just do that. And it's admired, it's respected.
No doubt on the next dead ball, another substitution would be made. You know they'd love to do the same for Trajan Langdon. Get him out of the game, and they'll get the 22nd timeout.
22nd timeout. Number 13, J.D. Simpson, replaces number 40.
Larry Shad is well aware of what's going on here. There's no funny stuff here with late timeouts and rubbing your nose in it. It's clearly an effort to get the applause for these seniors in their last appearance in Cameron.
That hug was from David Henderson, the assistant coach I mentioned earlier, was such a workaholic in the early days of Coach K's tenure. And Langdon is still on the floor, so chances are he will be replaced shortly as well. But D. Bryant will come in for him in just a few moments. Get in there! Knocked home. Carrawell getting it done.
Timeout on the floor.
And Bryant will check in and listen to the ovation for Langdon.
Replaces number 21, Trajan Langdon.
New Duke season three-point leader, 90 of them off the 17 today from three-point range. Douglas on the floor now for Clemson along with Gilmore. Al Douglas. Gilmore on the wing. Avery looking long for Burgess. A bit overthrown. 1 tick left. Duke will move to 27-1 and 15-0 in the Atlantic Coast Conference. Clemson will drop to 15-12, 4-10 in the league. Seniors Day, a tremendous success